Hello, welcome to our session on navigating college athletics. This is the National Catholic College Admission Association Navigating College Athletics session. Thank you so much for being here. Just a reminder, this is a webinar, so you will not be able to unmute yourselves or put your cameras on. So we encourage you to type all your questions in the Q&A chat box, okay? And my name is Elisa Prasad. I'm from Barry University. We'll get started right now. So some things to consider: time commitment, your career goals, life choices, your major choice, so what you're going to study, realistic assessment of personal ability, and your motivation for playing at university. So you're considering your options. So I'm sure you've seen these acronyms before: NAIA, NJCAA, and NCAA, and we'll elaborate on the differences.
Hello, I'm Susan Whipple. I'm talking to you from Marquette University, which is a Division I institution. As my colleague was saying, there are a lot of different options when you think about athletics, and many times students only think about Division I and Division II and don't explore the great options that are available through the NCAA Division III, the NAIA, and also the NJCAA, the National Junior Collegiate Athletic Association, which is actually a part of the NCAA, but is often forgotten about. And it shouldn't be overlooked by you or by any other student who is thinking about athletics as part of their academic future. So you can see here that we have outlined what are some of the differences between Division I, Division II, Division III. It's important to understand that scholarships are available at all of the divisions except Division III. However, Division III will still give merit or academic scholarships, so don't look them over. Really consider all of the options that are available to you. You do want to be considering how competitive are you and what is the best location for you in terms of division to look at, because that is going to be very important in terms of who you are going to target and also which coaches might be looking at you as a good fit for their program. Like I said, don't overlook any of them. You may find that an NAIA institution is the better fit for you. Especially if you're looking at a smaller institution, you don't want to be part of a massive institution, or you know that your playing ability is not at the Olympic level that a Division I or possibly Division II team would be looking for. So do keep those open. And one of the things to remember is if your goal is to become a professional athlete, you can get there from any of these divisions, so don't overlook any of the opportunities. One of the things that if you are thinking about Division I or Division II that you will need to do is to register for the NCAA Clearinghouse or Eligibility Center. Many people will refer to it as the clearinghouse because it is something that Division I and II players need to clear to be eligible for recruitment and play. So remember, it is only something that's required for athletes that are bound for Division I and Division II. So if you are thinking about starting with the NJCAA at a 2-year institution, you're not going to need to do this immediately. Or if you're looking at a Division III institution or an NAIA institution, you do not need to register with the Eligibility Center. But if you know that you are the caliber of athlete that is Division I or Division II, you will need to register with the Eligibility Center. It costs $135 to register, but once you have done that, you don't have to keep registering. Don't register too early and don't register too late. If you are in a 12-year system, you can register as early as the end of your 10th year of studies. And so keep in mind when is a good time. When you do register for the Eligibility Center, it will guide you through the process, but you're also going to need to have academic assistance from your school, and you're also going to need to include information about amateurism that is also part of the NCAA process. We're going to have time for you to ask questions about this and how does this all work out and what are the differences. And keep in mind, you can always be putting in questions into the Q&A that we could be looking at and also keeping in mind for later. So now we're going to move on to the next subject, but don't hesitate to put those questions into the Q&A.
Thanks, Susan. Hi, everyone. My name is Mary DeVilliers, and I am the Director of International Admissions for the University of Notre Dame. I'm going to talk about the really important area of the application process. It's important to remember that, yes, you may be looking for sports programs that you could potentially be recruited to, but you also are looking for universities that you will be admitted to. So some important things to keep in mind. First, you need to do thorough research. So just as Susan walked you through all the many options for athletics, you also want to look at other factors as well, because these are places where you will be spending at least 4 years of your life, and you really want to make sure this is going to be a good home for you. So check the size, the location, what are the academic programs that are offered, what are the athletic programs. The school might have an amazing team that you would love to join, but they might not have the major that you really envision for yourself. And then also look at the money. Do they have need-based financial aid for international students, if that is something that you feel you may need, depending on what kind of grant money they may provide to athletes. So again, all of these are very important in your search. Then you want to ensure, as you're going through high school, and all of you are juniors now, so you're approaching your final year of high school, all of your grades for all of your years matter for the admission process. So you just want to make sure that you're making yourself as strong a candidate as possible, so you have as many choices as possible. And then you need to check to see if a university is requiring testing. Also, if they require you yourself to provide English proficiency testing, that could happen depending on the university. So not all universities have gone test optional, so it's really important to check on that. Then also too, they want to make sure that you have everything pulled together, because they want this to be a very quick process where they're working with the admissions office and can seamlessly provide information to them in advance of your application. Also, when you're looking at the high school classes that you'd be taking moving into your senior year, you want to make sure you have a challenging set of courses, but not anything that's going to be overwhelming. Strive for your balance. If you are someone that has the ability to take on a very hefty course load and still be fine between sports and academics, only you yourself will know that. So make sure you're finding that really good balance. So again, you are a strong candidate for a number of different programs. And then get involved in a meaningful way beyond athletics. Be well-rounded. Again, you may be striving for admission with potential to walk on, or you may be looking at a number of different kinds of institutions. So you really want to make sure that you've covered your bases. And then again, please pay attention to what is available to you for funding outside of potential athletic money, because depending on what your circumstances is with recruitment, you may need to be looking for schools where there's financial aid for you with the potential to maybe walk onto a team. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lauren Schicchetti. I'm the Associate Director of Undergraduate Admission at Newman University. We're a small private Catholic institution right outside of Philadelphia. I'm also the head women's soccer coach there. We are a Division III school, so Division III, you can wear more than one hat as a staff member. So I love sharing the athletic side of this process as well. So as a coach, coaches want to hear from players. So if you are interested in a school and you want to reach out and you've done your research and you like that school, reach out directly to the coach via email, via phone. Don't have your parents do it. Make sure you're the one that's connecting with the coaches, because you're going to be the one that's playing for that coach if you're at the university. You also want to make sure coach is aware if you are visiting campus ahead of time. With the current climate, we know there aren't a lot of on-campus visit options for schools, but we definitely want to make sure that if you're coming to campus, we know it and that we can plan to meet with you if that is available. Every institution at every level is very different about how you're allowed to visit. Division I, there are limitations on how you can visit depending on your year in high school. So you want to make sure you're thinking about that as well, but an email can help with that, and admission can help with that as well. Make sure that if you're going to a virtual visit and you're reaching out to a coach, tell the coach you went to the virtual visit, you liked what you saw, connect directly to their school and show your interest there. And then also invite them to see you play. Send video, send film, share your club coach's information. All of this will be really helpful for you to be able to really make that connection for the coach. At the Division I level, they are limited in how they can interact with you. So you want to make sure some of these pieces are sent to them and you don't necessarily expect an email back or expect contact back, because they may not be able to do that because of NCAA rules. So a couple little helpful hints as you guys are going through this process and you're thinking about college athletics. Don't rule out a school that shows interest in you because you've never heard of them. It may be the best fit school for you. It may be the place that you are destined to be, and you just don't know it yet. I love talking about that. I'd love to try new foods because that means if it may be my favorite food later on in life, if I didn't try it, I would never know. So keep an open mind. Really makes a big difference, especially if you find that exact coach, that exact school, the exact major that really fits you for your college career. Don't assume coaches will reach out to you. I was a Division I student athlete. I assumed at the time they were allowed to contact me that they were just going to do it and call me. And that didn't happen. So it's something that you have to think about, and you definitely have to do that research first and figure out what you want and advocate for yourself to that institution. The more interest you show, the more often coaches will show an interest back in you, depending on what school you're going to. Don't assume all sports at a school are created equal. There may be a really great lacrosse program at a school, and maybe they're just average at softball. So it really depends on the sport, on the school. You may not know a school may be a national championship or a national champion at a sport that you've never heard of. Newman is a small private Division III school. We have a national championship in ice hockey. Who would know that? No one. But you may not know that, but you want to find out. Am I that right fit for that level of play? And then don't compare your process to others. Pave your own way, find your own path. I know a lot of athletes compare and say, I'm committed, or my teammate is committed here or there or wherever. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you are happy with your process and your time frame on when you want to commit to a school.
Okay, so when you're looking at the recruiting timeline, just know that variety is the spice of life and that things can be very different at different universities. So you really want to maybe keep track of how things work by university. For example, at Notre Dame, if you reach out to the admission office to ask about recruiting, we're going to move you over to start looking at our different compliance regulations and getting you in touch with our coaches as opposed to us helping you with that. But every university is different, so you kind of want to make sure that you're in communication with coaches about the process at the school so that you know what expectations are and if there are timelines that you want to follow. And then Lauren, I don't know if you want to speak to about the recruiting timeline and verbal commitments.
Absolutely. So this means something different for every school and at every division. Division I, you do have an option to sign a national letter of intent. The Division III level, you have something called a celebratory signing letter. What these things really mean, they don't necessarily mean anything until you actually get onto campus and decide that you were going to be there, pay that enrollment deposit, and get there. These are all things that you can change your mind on. So yes, if you're committed, that's great. If you know where you want to go, definitely participate in all of these things. They are great ways to highlight your experience and what you're going to do at that school. But be ready to do that, because what that signals to other coaches as well is that you are committed. That means they're not going to look at you the same way as a student that is not committed. So you want to make sure that you're really careful about when you're ready to make that commitment. If you're talking about some of the other things like pre-reads, Coaches are able to do these in conjunction with the Office of Admissions at their school. So they can meet with the admissions officials and find out, one, are you admissible? And this can happen before your senior year. And two, maybe what merit scholarship or what scholarships you can qualify for. This allows coaches to have students make commitments earlier if they want to make those choices. And it allows you as a student athlete to really understand what that cost is going to be in some way prior to making that commitment.
Mm-hmm. And I would also echo, try to have as many things prepared for that pre-read as possible, because there could be questions that admissions will ask in regards to that. So if you believe that English proficiency might be something you need to show up front, have your test score ready to go, because they may come back and ask for that. If you have SAT or ACT scores, depends on the school and their requirements, have those kind of ready to go, just so that you can give everybody everything they need so they can quickly assess, and you won't have to drag it out too long.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Michael Costanza. I'm the athletic liaison in the admissions department for Loyola New Orleans. A few words of advice. This process is as much the coaches discovering you as you discovering the schools and the coaches, like we've been saying. So dropping out that third bullet, make sure that the school is a good fit for you, and really go through communication with those coaches, find out the kind of the team chemistry, find out about the what is required of a student athlete at that school. Professionalism is a big thing too as you communicate with coaches. Make sure that those emails have subject lines. Make sure you're asking good questions of the coaches, finding out about the culture of the team. If a face-to-face meeting is possible, I'd say go for it. Again, just make sure that you're telling those coaches that you're on campus. Coachability. Coaches really want to know what kind of athlete you are, but also what kind of student and person you are. So when communicating with those coaches, tell them about your position on your teams, how you interact with others on your team. Show them that you're willing to learn, that you can play a role on a team, and that will go a long way as well. So just a few words of advice there.
We can't do this presentation without talking a little bit about how COVID has impacted not just everything in our lives and your lives, but also its impact on athletics. And you may, of course, be following some of these changes, but you also may be unaware of many of the impacts that COVID has on athletics and student athletes in particular. The NCAA has indicated that a student who would normally have had their senior year in the spring of 2020 is now eligible to have that senior season currently. And so that is a very good thing for them, but it's also not a good thing necessarily for you, because a lot of the students who would normally be seniors this year are not going to be leaving the team. They have that additional year of eligibility. So what does that mean? That means that there are less spots on rosters. So coaches who normally might have been looking to fill 5 spots previously now maybe only have 1 spot open or 2 spots open. And so that has a direct impact in, maybe you're not as recruited or as interesting to them because they still have somebody there. So that's why earlier when I was talking about the different divisions, we wanted to encourage you to look at other options. And that may be something that you do want to keep in mind. In the same way that you're looking at different options for admission, you should also be looking at different options in terms of athletics. Traditionally, a student would have come onto campus and they would have had a formal tour and meeting with the team. That really can't happen now. So things are having to happen electronically. And so sometimes you're not getting the same sense of how you gel with the team or teammates as you might have. So this is also a challenge. Traditionally, there have been periods of time when coaches were not able to communicate with students, called dead periods. That's all thrown into disarray because a soccer would normally be happy to talk with people at the present. But guess what? Soccer's having their season, or football, as you might call it in your part of the world. And so it is creating challenges in terms of when can a student hear, and is a student not hearing back from a coach because it's their season and they're busy? Is it because the coach can't communicate? Or is it because the coach is not interested? So it is causing a lot more stress for students. And it's also, coaches are receiving lots more inquiries than normal. And so, in some ways, we're all figuring out what is the best advice to give you in terms of contacting them. And again, when we go through the Q&A, I think that's a perfect opportunity to really raise some of the challenges, and more important, specific to your sport, when is the better time to be connecting with coaches? The other thing to keep in mind, and this may be a good thing in all of this craziness that COVID has brought us, is that exams such as ACT and SAT are not required by the Eligibility Center. So you who are thinking, yeah, I really want to be Division 1 and 2, but I really don't want to take the ACT or the SAT, there is a little bit of a silver lining in all of this, in that test optional policies remain not just for admissions, but also for the Eligibility Center. And again, another challenge to think about is, how are you able to be seen by a coach when you can't physically go to the location where the coach is, or the coach can't physically travel to see you? So you really do need to market yourself. And as my colleague and coach was kind of talking about, you really need to put yourself out there and to be thinking about, what is the best way for me to be letting coaches know that I'm here, I'm willing, and I have strong abilities. And so I think at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Alyssa.
Thank you. So here is all of our contact information. We have the Q&A open. If anyone has questions, I do see there were some questions put in the Q&A and they have been answered. Some great questions. If anyone has any more questions specifically for individual in universities, please reach out to us. Our contact info is there. Our emails are there. I didn't mention earlier, Barry University is in Miami, Florida, and we're Division 2. So if anyone has any questions about Barry University or our D2 program, feel free to send me an email or send all of us an email. Just on any questions you may have later on. I know that all questions were answered.
Alyssa, it looks like we have one more in there.
Okay, let's see.
Lauren, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
we've
figured I
actually
would.
got a second one in there too.
Yes. So to be able to put yourself out there, if you are not able to play right now, and if you have video, create a video of yourself playing. And it doesn't have to be professionally done. You don't need to use any of those recruiting services. Coaches know how to watch video. They know what to expect, how to see. If you haven't been able to play either and you don't have video, create a practice session. Go out and show your skills in some way. That at least shows you're making the effort to try to show a coach what you're able to do. And it's a lot easier from some sports than others. Track, you can write a time and you can tell what that time is. You know, soccer, football, some of these other sports, it's a little bit harder to see because they are team sports. Once you do that, if you have that as well, send an email to the coach. Say, I'm really interested in your school. I've been on your website. I know what major I want. Be specific that you are showing interest in that institution, because coaches are going to be like, wow, you actually looked us up and you know what majors we have. Make sure you put all of that in there. If you do have game film that you can share, or if you have tournaments coming up, put that information in the email. Say, I am playing on April 5th at 2:15 on field 23. I am jersey number 6, and I would love to have you attend the game. We wear red, and make sure that all that information is correct. All too often I show up at a field and I'm looking for a certain number and I can't find them on the field. It makes it really hard to recruit you. If you're a position that maybe doesn't play as much, like a goalkeeper, and you're splitting time, say the half that you're playing in, say whether you play offense or defense, so coaches can find you. All of this specific information really helps coaches identify you. The more often you reach out to them, they see how interested you are, the more likely they're going to make the effort to come see you play.
Lauren, there's a somewhat related question. A student is asking, given COVID, how do you recommend we put ourselves out there in the age of COVID? And kind of a follow-up question to that is, are there going to be showcases either hosted by universities, say this summer, or, when should students start putting themselves out there based on whether they're a junior or a senior?
Yeah, so at the Division I level, most of the time coaches are recruiting earlier. And I say earlier could be sophomore and freshman year, honestly. Depending on the school, could be junior or senior year. Division III schools, a different level, but there are some extremely talented Division III schools that could probably win a head-to-head competition with a Division I school. So they may have a recruiting time that is a little bit earlier than some other ones. So really you need to make sure you reach out to the coach and see if there are things going on campus or if they're attending specific showcases. There are showcases going on right now for a lot of different sports. Athletics are still happening. So if you're in an area where they're not happening, then you have to wait a little bit longer, possibly put some of those other pieces together. If you are in an area or with a team that is practicing or playing, definitely put that information together. The earlier, the better. Then you always have it and you can always update it. And then ask coaches if they're having ID clinics. That's a really great way to not only visit the school, but also be able to, depending on the type of ID clinic, be seen by the coach directly who would be coaching you at the school, or other coaches that might be similar institutions that could be there coaching as well. They're really great ways to get to know the team, usually the players that are helping out run the clinics, and really getting to know. I know when I was looking, they didn't have ID clinics at that time. They did have camps, but I went to a couple camps knowing that I wanted to check out the school at the same time. So make those efforts. If you're going to try to go to camp or a clinic, hit a couple schools in the area and see if they have some things as well. So I would definitely say, try to get on campus if you can. Those ID clinics are great ways to do it. Be wary of the ID clinic that is a moneymaker versus an ID clinic that is really specific to a recruiting tool. So you can tell that by typically the size of the clinic, and depending on who is the coaching staff at the clinic too.
Mary, would you like to answer this question? We have a student asking, can I apply to different divisions?
I believe that yes, you can. Okay, good. And like I said before, you really want to keep your search broad, especially if there's a particular kind of major that you're really hoping to do, or you want to have as many options for playing. And something I was also going to mention to keep in mind, if you have done a personal assessment of your skill and you feel like you would like to go to a Division I university, but you might not be at that level for recruitment, a lot of universities will have really substantial club sports programs where you're still getting to compete against other universities on a pretty major level with a pretty major time commitment, but not so much as, being on the Division I varsity team. Or they may have the opportunity for you to try out for a walk-on. So again, keep your options wide open, and keep an open mind about where you are with your sport and what things you would be happy doing.
I think the only thing I would add to that is, when you think about universities, we say that you can apply to many different universities, keep your options open. But once you have committed to a team or to a university, you should stop searching. And I see our coach Lauren definitely nodding her head about that one, because that can get you into trouble if you're doing that. So once that commitment is made, that should be it.
And that's, go ahead, Susan. And that's why I said it's extremely important to make sure you're ready to make that commitment. Don't do it too early. I would also recommend visiting that school in all 4 seasons because one story I love to tell, a student that was looking at a school up in New England, loved it in May, did not love it as much in February. So knowing the school, knowing what to expect all year round is really important as well.
I'm not sure which one of my colleagues might like to answer this question, but there is a student who's asking, would it be worth it to go to boarding school to be more recognized by American football college scouts, given that I currently live and play in Mexico City? Any takers for that one?
I'll jump in. I don't have the most insight into football, honestly. American football, not soccer, or real football. But the one thing I would say is you are your best advocate. So if you're reaching out to coaches, if you have video, if you have options to play and to be seen, you don't necessarily have to change schools to be able to be seen. You know, we're in a world of technology where it's a lot easier now than it was years ago. The benefit of a boarding school is maybe the connections that you have to be able to do the outreach to the coaches and maybe the connections that the staff there have. But I would say if it's something that you think you can do on your own, it is absolutely doable to do that outreach.
Thank you, Lauren. I would add to that also, remember that you are choosing a location not just for athletics, but also for your studies and your experiences. You know, as Lauren was saying, make sure you like the place you're going. If you do go to a boarding school so that you can be recognized and you hate that location, that is going to have a horrible impact on your studies, your performance as a player. And so we really encourage you to really make holistic decisions, and not just do something simply for the athletic portion of it. So many times we know that students will be athletes in a location and their only reason for being there is to play. And when that reason goes away, they have no reason to remain at that institution. And that's unfortunate because that means that you as a student are not happy and need to reevaluate where do you want to go, what do you want to do as a student. And it can be very difficult for students to have that experience as well. So you are a student athlete, not an athlete student. So do keep that in mind. And then we do have another question. What would you recommend for international students versus local students, specifically talking about soccer? And I'm not sure what that question might be asking. Perhaps they're asking in terms of getting recognized, or perhaps they're asking about the academic aspect of it. So not sure who might like to tackle that one.
I'll jump in again. So I think all sports are similar when it comes to, international versus students that are local. I think it depends, number one, on the fit of the how they support international students. And then also you have to think about cost. Because again, depending on the school, an athletic scholarship may cover a little bit if you're not a full ride student, meaning you're not getting all of the money to be able to get a full scholarship and paid for tuition. That scholarship may not cover a lot of the cost. So as an international student, you may not be able to get additional financial aid. So I think that's something you need to be considering, definitely. And then again, with the soccer world, soccer is an international sport. I think most coaches know that, most athletes know that soccer is in an international world. So if you're looking at a school, make sure you're still reaching out to that coach, connecting with them, understanding their processes. There are some processes, and I believe someone else can speak to this too, about timelines for international students are a little bit different than for our domestic students because of visas. And every school is a little bit different in how those things happen. So knowing that timeline, you can maybe make some decisions about what institutions you're looking at as well.
Lauren, I think I'd add to that, remember that as a student, you have to meet the same academic requirements for admission. You have to meet the same requirements, that coaches are looking at. So, for international students, you are not going to have additional or an easier route for admission than any other international student. And by the same token, you are going to have to meet the requirements for the athletic portion that a student would not have to meet who's not applying to be a student athlete. So there aren't necessarily additional burdens placed on an international student athlete that aren't there for anyone else seeking admission in terms of that. So that is kind of, something to think about, but also to take into consideration when you are looking at where are you going to be a student. If you know that you are a B student, you may not want to go to the most competitive university where you know that not only are you going to have an incredible time commitment to your sport, but you're also going to be spending a lot more time focused on academics than you might at a less competitive institution. So these are all part of thinking about what to do. But Lauren, I think we might have another question for you. And that is a student who is asking about what are the things that they need to include in a video? What would you be your short list?
Yeah, and I actually just responded to that one because it really depends on the sport. I can speak to soccer specifically. I want to see you on the ball and I want to see where the ball goes after you play it. So sometimes players will send me a video of just them kicking the ball. I can't see where it goes. I have no idea if they connected a pass. So kind of the bigger zoomed out of where is the ball going. If it's a team sport, how do you move off the play? So if it's lacrosse or something like that, are you doing what you should be doing positionally when the ball isn't around you or when the play isn't happening near you? Also is important to coaches. The close-up stuff of your touch on the ball is helpful. And again, depending on sport, I speak mostly towards soccer with this, but it's similar to some of the other team sports as well. And I would say for some of, the sports that come with times, track and field, swimming, they all have times and events. Those would all be really helpful to add to coaches to put in highlight videos of you as well. Football is a completely different animal. It really depends, but you can ask the coach specifically. They're going to give you what they need. They're going to say, I need this to be able to see and assess. And a lot of times it's really helpful for them to get you on campus and have that conversation at an ID clinic, because then they compare your abilities to the players that are also looking at the same institution. So that can be really helpful to do too. The video is just a starting point, especially right now in the COVID world. The long-term goal would be to get on campus, get to a camp, an ID clinic, something like that, so a coach can see you face-to-face or be seen at a tournament where they can assess at a bit higher level.
Thank you.
Great questions. And at this time, this concludes our session. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you to my colleagues. And please reach out to us. We are here to be of any assistance. Thank you and good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good luck.